Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of Antics talk show Crosstalk. Well, he's back in the news again, Alexey Navalny. The European Union is on the brink of imposing sanctions on Russia over the Navalny affair. The latest news is that they will impose visa restrictions on 4 officials, as well as asset freezes on 4 officials, one of whom is the prosecutor general, another one is the director of prison. So much so tedious. There are a number of bizarre aspects to the whole thing. I mean, first of all, why exactly is the European Union getting itself involved in this Navalny affair? I mean, they were, of course, in the wrong over Crimea, but at least they could argue that that's an international matter and that they were shocked and horrified, appalled by Russia's violations of international law. It would have been a fraudulent argument, but at least it's an argument. But in the case of Navalny, it is bizarre. This is entirely a matter of for the Russian courts, a matter for the Russian laws. The EU has no say in this. Nonetheless, they're going ahead with sanctions. The other aspect to all of this is that if the problem is that Navalny is a, quote, political prisoner, unquote, then there's a good example of political trials and political prisoners across the Atlantic. The United States is embarking on a massive prosecution of people who had almost no connection with what happened on January the 6th. They were nowhere even near the Capitol Hill on that day. And that crime is apparently that they brought into question the election result, which was dubious, but that's their great crime. And so the prosecutors are actively working, trying to figure out how they can bring a case against Roger Stone and Alex Jones, and particularly as Alex Jones is actually on tape on January the 6th, telling people, do not go into the Capitol building. It's a trap. You're being set up. He's there on tape saying, don't do this. And yet prosecutors are seeing that, well, how can we tie into a vast conspiracy? And now, of course, conspiracies are the way that repressive governments crush dissent. If you can scoop up enough people into a, quote, conspiracy, unquote, then you've managed to crush your political opposition. But the EU takes no interest in this and is just obsesses about Navalny. Okay, Peter, what's your take?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's tedious and it's very, very frustrating. So the European Union is demanding that Navalny be released from prison from a crime that he was convicted of. He violated his parole, and now he's been, because of that, he's finishing his sentence because he violated his parole. Right. Okay, so what does the European Union want Russia to do? To break its own laws? Right. You're telling me somebody in Brussels is demanding that the prison where Navalny is, that he be released? On what authority does the European Union have? What is it standing in the Russian legal code? I'll tell you, zero. Okay, right. And your point too is let's change it around. Let's say Lavrov is saying, why are you targeting Trump's supporters? Are you politicizing your judicial system, your police forces? You're having the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, is anointed a former general that is a rabid wokist, yes, that has already told the media what he thinks happened before he does his investigation. Shouldn't somebody, warn the Speaker of the House that she may be jeopardizing due process here? I mean, but what if Lavrov said that? Okay. But Russia is not going to do that because it's not interested in getting involved in the internal affairs of the United States, as crazy as it is in the US here.
Yes.
See, what really annoys me is that, you know, the US and the European Union, they apparently have time on their hands, you know? Wow, it must be great. Everything is going swimmingly, right? Okay, so and so they build they turn the capital into a fortress because they're afraid of demonstration and protesting. But in Russia, on a regular basis, people are given permission and a place and police protection to protest and demonstrate.
Right.
And they can do it on whatever issue they want, as long as they don't impede normal working of a city. You know, you can't tie up the city center for hours on end. I mean, police cars have to work, ambulances have to work, the fire department has to work, the postal system has to work. But so, I mean, Russia's doing everything within its own laws. And then you have these, particularly in the situation right now in the US, where we don't even know under what laws people are operating under, okay?
No.
I mean, so, I mean, for me, it's very frustrating because is that the European Union is essentially, if they may not be aware of it, but I mean, essentially is that they're making the demand, if we can't meddle in your internal affairs, we will sanction you. And Russia's going to turn around and say, well, then we're not going to have anything to do with you. We're in the same neighborhood.
Right.
And okay, you will not set the terms and conditions of a relationship. The two parties do that. You come to terms on what you're going to discuss and how you will discuss it. Okay, one party cannot dictate that. Not one.
That's right. That's exactly right. This is a matter entirely internal to Russia, and it's a matter of the administration of the law in Russia. He was found guilty, of a crime of corruption. This wasn't dissent. Then there was the other case that we talked about earlier today. He was sued by a World War II veteran because Navalny had insulted him. You don't do that in Russia.
It's illegal.
Yeah, it's these World War II veterans are holy men. I mean, you simply you don't touch them. He made a complete fool of himself in court. Whereas any responsible person in a US court, in a UK court would have gone in and said, I apologize, I was misunderstood, I had drunk too much the night before, I didn't know what I was saying, whatever. You don't just go and clown around and start talking about jars of pickles. So he brought this on himself, and the EU embracing him and conditioning its relations with Russia on this matter is just, as you say, they have a lot of time on their hands. I mean, don't they have any other more urgent issues to be getting on with than messing around with Russia?
George,
what antagonizes them? Russians really antagonizes them.
But the message is that I think the way the Russians look at it, say, fine, you don't want to have a relationship. Okay, fine, but it's your decision. We have tried very hard, but we're not going to take the knee, okay? And no country, no outside influence is going to dictate the internal conditions of the Russian Federation, okay? Because there must be a quid pro quo. So maybe someone from the foreign ministry ought to go and investigate what happened in Ferguson or what happened in Portland. Or in Chaz or Chop or whatever it was called, okay? And, maybe Newsom, did he abuse his power by going to the French laundry? We should investigate that. Maybe we should sanction him unless he gives a better explanation. You see how absurd all of this is? But this is international relations. This isn't a talk show. This isn't a game show.
That's right. No, but it's very interesting because, of course, the Russians are very fastidious. They've always been very fastidious. They think, well, as diplomats, we don't interfere in the internal affairs of other countries. And they've done this. They've been very consistent. And even now, they're sort of wading into doing that, but they don't feel comfortable when they do that. I mean, they've raised some of these issues. Well, what about what's going on with the whole post-election litigation in the United States? But you can see that the Russians just aren't comfortable doing it. It's not in their tradition. But that's exactly what they should say. I mean, then they should say, look, we are very concerned with what's going on in Washington. We don't believe the 200 people who have already been charged, and it looks like maybe 1,000 people are going to be charged over the events of January the 6th. We don't believe they're going to get a fair trial. This is in the DC. The DC courts are extremely political. It's a Democratic city. Everyone who's going to be put on trial are supporters of Donald Trump. And we've seen the way the DC courts have dealt with Roger Stone, the way they dealt with General Flynn. We don't believe they're going to get a fair trial. We will impose sanctions on you because we are very worried about how the supporters of one political candidate are being thrown into prison. And literally, they're already being thrown into prison. There have been no trials yet. And many of them are sitting in prison because they haven't been given bail.
And well, where's Kamala Harris with her bail fund, right, okay, to get people out? No, this is just an absurd what the European Union is doing right now, and it will very much regret it, because I can tell you, George, there are other places to go. There are other partners. There are other projects. Okay. One of the most important things that happened in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis is that Russia realized just how vulnerable it was. And a lot of what we used to call oligarchs here, I don't like the term anymore, but a big business and big concerns were over leveraged in this very toxic banking system in London and in New York. And they learned their lesson. And so what they've done is they've disengaged that. And because the Kremlin is just saying, well, we're not going to bail you out. Okay, I mean, you get into their toxic system. Maybe you should invest a little bit more in this country. Topic of another video. And so what they've done is that they've really kind of started to create a bulletproof shield around them. So go ahead, you can throw sanctions. I mean, I was just looking at Reuters here. It was very interesting. They actually used mainly symbolic response. Even Reuters is saying that, okay? But, this charade is run its course, okay? This is, it's the same episode on Netflix over and over again. And, why should the Russian side put effort into it? And it's the European Union at the end of the day will suffer the most, as they have with sanctions since 2014. They're really hurting their own national interest. But it's not up to Russia to say what your national interest is. That's up to you to decide what your national interest is. But Russia will identify its own and pursue it, okay? And that's exactly what it's doing. I have said many times here and on Crosstalk, how much longer will the Russians have strategic patience? I'm glad it looks like it's coming to an end. Because why invest in a bad relationship? You either fix it or you walk away, okay? And the second party doesn't want to fix it on mutually advantageous terms. So get rid of it, leave it alone, walk away.
The interesting thing is that the EU have a chance to carve out an alternative space for itself. In other words, it's part of the West, it's allied with the United States, but it runs its own foreign policy. It has its own relations with Russia, and it doesn't follow the American lead. And they could have done. I mean, after all, EU and Russia have many things in common. They are, after all, neighbors. There are a lot of economic ties, and this would have been a wonderful opportunity for the EU to show, well, there are two Wests. There's the West of Washington, and there's the West of Brussels. We're going our own course. And instead, they're as belligerent as Washington. It makes absolutely no sense, and it doesn't in any way help the EU. How does this in any way help the EU to impose these sanctions over Navalny? I mean, who the hell in Europe even knows who Navalny is?
What we've talked endlessly about here and on Crosstalk is this is an opportunity for Europe to lay a marker, to be a third pole in a multipolar world, and they're walking away from it. What they're doing is they're going to continue to be in the embrace of the U.S., which means the U.S. will say, "Let's go start this foreign war. Get your troops together." Like, okay, why do we need to do another endless war? Oh, and you have to buy our expensive energy. Don't buy it from them. Okay, right. You know, Russia is for investment. They want to invest in the European Union, and if they are allowed to do that, the European Union can invest in Russia. There's plenty of examples of it. German industry, they're the ones that are going to be scratching their head saying, "Why are you kissing goodbye a market?" That right. Russia is the largest consumer market in Europe.
Right.
No, even for luxury goods.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And for the EU to condition its relations over Navalny is just, the height of foolishness. And then we can see how hypocritical the EU is, because of course it isn't concerned with political repression. If it was serious about it, they would at least raise some questions about what the hell's going on in Washington now. I mean, where is this going? Where, hundreds and hundreds of people, you're putting them on trial. You're cooking up these horrific conspiracy theories under which you can send people to prison for 20 years for putting his feet up on the desk of Nancy Pelosi. Some granny who just wandered into the Capitol building. She didn't know what the hell was going on. After all, they opened the doors. People didn't know whether it was illegal to go in or not. Some granny is now sitting in prison without bail. I mean, what the hell's going on? This will be an opportunity for the EU to say, we have a different understanding of political dissent from the United States.
Yeah, it's like arrest them all and let God figure it out. Okay, right. But that's a very much authoritarian idea. Is that everyone must be guilty? Okay, let's sweep them all up. Okay, what they're doing is the European Union believes it's talking about some values, but look at their Atlantic neighbor. Basically suspending a number of basic civil rights of so many people here. Not a peep out of them. Not a peep. Okay. Right. See, I don't know. I don't know. Future historians will look back on this and just, why does the European Union act in such a dysfunctional way? Yep. All right. I mean, Joseph Borrell came to Moscow, made a complete buffoon out of himself, and like a 13-year-old, I'm going to get back at them for embarrassing me. Wow, I would have expected more from, and you and I growing up always did expect more from the Europeans. Okay. Right. But we're wrong now, not in this day and age.
That's a very, very good point, because I think, as we've talked about before, back during the Cold War, Germany pursued its own foreign policy. I mean, the Americans shook their fist and railed with rage at Germany's Ostpolitik, but Germany didn't change. Helmut Schmidt, Helmut Kohl, they still pursued the Ostpolitik, however much Washington was furious about this, because it was in Germany's national interest. And then again, when we had the gas pipeline deal in the 1980s, the Reagan administration again raged, threatened the Europeans. They still went ahead with the gas pipeline deal. So it is extraordinary that at that time, when the USSR existed, the Europeans seemed to have more of a sense of independence and their own sense of what's in their interest than they do today, when they're not confronted by the Soviet Union. As you say, historians will look back with bafflement. What happened in Europe?
What's really baffling and actually quite sad and shameful is that they think that this Russophobic Russia baiting is going to keep their bloc together. It's a substitute. I mean, it's a huge distraction that you don't talk about all the other things that are going on in the European Union, which is very dysfunctional and will only continue to be so. You need an outside irritant, and it makes you feel morally good about yourself. You hit yourself on the chest. Wow, I'm really a moral character here. It's pretty cheap stuff. It's cheap theater, because it's going to have no good positive ending. I guarantee you that enough is enough. Okay, if there's going to be a gesture, it's going to have to come from Brussels, because they're done here.
Right. Right. No, I think that's exactly it. And I think that's what Lavrov told Borrell, and that's what Lavrov has said in subsequent interviews, that we are not interested any longer with these kinds of gimmicks, whereby, oh, we want to work out agreements with Russia on this, that, and the other. Oh, but in the meantime, we will impose sanctions. Oh, in the meantime, we will issue all sorts of orders and commands. Russia must do this, Russia must do that. Russia's failing to abide by the Minsk Accords, even though Russia is not a party to the Minsk Accords. Russia is interfering in Belarus. Russia's failing to adhere to its agreements over Georgia. And this constant list of accusations and charges. And Russia said, we've had enough of all of this. We're not going to be, we're not going to be battered around to and fro in this way.
Wasn't it Sarkozy? He's the one that drew up the agreement for South Ossetia and Georgia. Remember?
Right.
Okay. I mean, and so these people have such short. The Minsk Accords. Russia is not a signatory of it, okay? And you have Ukrainian officials openly saying, oh, we have never had any intention of honoring it.
No, exactly.
But it's Moscow's fault.
No, exactly. We have no, and that the only reason why we pretend to adhere to it is that we can impose sanctions on Russia. I mean, they said this openly. We only pretend to adhere to the Minsk Accords so that we can then insist that the Europeans impose sanctions on Russia. So it's completely fraudulent. And then when it comes to Belarus, that's a separate country. What's any of that got to do with Russia? And yet again, Borrell brings up, Belarus. And again, Russia, what has that got to do with us? You're the one who's actually interfering in Belarus elections.
The thing is that it's very, very simple. The European Union has to decide, you want a relationship or not a relationship? It's up to you. And the way things seem right now, the door is closing very quickly in your face. Right. You better think about this, because it might be really hard to get that door ajar again anytime soon.
Yep, I agree. Well, all right, Peter, thank you very much. We will, of course, maintain our laser-like focus on the antics of the EU and everything else. So it's a big week this week.
Rumble.
Oh yeah, Rumble, but it's always a big week for Rumble, but it's a big week. Donald Trump will be making his first public appearance at the end of this week at the conservative CPAC. So that would be interesting. And as Peter just pointed out, we are now on Rumble. So please look us up there. And remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.